Hey everybody, welcome back to Video. So, today we're continuing the series on the MiSTer FPGA DE10 Nano project, more specifically the Sega Saturn core, because of course it's been updated again. SRG320 keeps fixing things on the GitHub tickets, giving us more features, more fun, and more improvements in some of the games that have been struggling ever so slightly. Before we get too far involved though, do me a huge favor down below, hit like and subscribe and ring that notification bell, definitely helps us out. And if you feel so inclined and want to support the channel, we got a Patreon link down below as well. But let's just get right into the fixes and improvements on the most recent cores and talk about how those kind of come through. And the number one thing recently that's been an absolute blast is getting full SNAC support into the core and compatibility with the 3D analog pad as well. Because not many games use the analog controller, but the ones that did benefit so greatly from them. Something like Sega Rally here, honestly the digital pad implementation is outstanding, maybe one of the best D-pad racers I've ever played. But when you put the 3D controller into the mix, and once you actually bend your mind around what the game is asking you to do with it, it is just such a spectacular time. And it's so great to see that SNAC is being incorporated into the core now in an official status, and it gives you just so much more to do. And considering Sega Rally's gone through so many different fixes, now I really can't see anything in this game, both the controls, the visuals, and the music, that would make me think it's doing anything other than what a real Sega Saturn hardware would do. And that is the great thing, because this game again is basically the poster child for what the Sega Saturn was. Sega Rally in arcades on Model 2 was a spectacular game, but when it came home to Saturn, this is probably still the best Model 2 to Saturn port ever made. It totally runs laps around Daytona USA, pun very much intended. And now having 3D support in it is just another fun piece of the puzzle, because these cores don't just try to recreate the hardware as far as the visuals and gameplay are concerned, it's also giving you all those different control options when you are playing them. As of the recording of this, there is still no light gun support, but hopefully that does come soon, because I really want to play some Virtual Cop and some House of the Dead on the core. But getting the 3D support in for the controller is just an added bonus on top of what's already an incredible core. This thing continues to shape up so well, and today if you want to sit down and play a one-player match at Sega Rally, you want to play heads up, you want to play with a digital pad, you want to play with a 3D controller, you can do absolutely anything you want in this game, and it's just going to work for you. The only thing you don't want to do is run out of time. That happens a lot in this game. You need to ride a clean race, and that just didn't happen today. Now moving over to another game that's seen recent improvements on the 2D background planes is Battle Gourad. This is another amazing rising shmup. It is available on different cores on MiSTer, but of course the Saturn version has its fun in its own right. And now today, with all of those visual improvements on the recent cores, it is just a better experience all around. And you marry that to one of the best shmups around in my opinion, and you are just 100% golden. The only thing I don't like about this is that the projectiles do blend into the background. That really doesn't have anything to do with the overall performance of the core in FPGA. It's just a complaint I've always had about this game. A lot of shmups will give you projectile and bullet colors so you can see them coming towards you. You'll see here our projectiles are a bright blue, almost purple, and very easy to read on the screen. Where your opponent shooting at you, their projectiles are going to be brown and gold sometimes, and that can be very difficult to actually understand what is coming towards you at any moment in time. I almost wish someone would go in and mod this game to create some projectiles of a different color that would make it just that much easier. But this is the type of game that puts VDP1 and VDP2 to the test. There's so much being drawn on the screen at once, so many different 2D planes, backgrounds, sprites, so many different projectiles on screen at once. If there was any slowdown or any issues in this game, it's going to make it that much less fun. And as far as this footage here is concerned, I can't see anything that makes me think this just isn't the Battle Gourad that I love on Sega Saturn. And again, I do realize there's other cores on MiSTer that can run this game as well, but having a Saturn version is a lot of fun, and it's another game that has seen improvements in recent cores, and that does matter. Sometimes when those GitHub ticket tests come in and the patch notes are there, you see a game like this and you can't wait to test it. Sometimes the patch notes are for games that basically no one might be interested in, but those changes do fundamentally fix a lot of different games. It just so happens the ticket was opened on that particular one. But Battle Gourad is not an easy game. It can definitely be difficult, but the best part here today is it runs perfectly fine on MiSTer FPGA, and that's all that really matters. This core really does feel like it's getting close to the finish line, but we'll have to see what comes in the next update. Now let's move over to Tokimeki Memorial, and I will say this is definitely not the genre in which I play my Sega Saturn games. It is a dating simulator, but but it did have some improvements on some of the most recent core updates as far as the GitHub tickets and patch notes were concerned. There were some issues with the intro, and those all seem to be ironed out, but honestly, I have never played this game before, so if you're familiar with it, leave me a comment down below and tell me what you think of the overall intro. I totally get this as a huge genre, but obviously being in Japanese and being a dating sim is just not anything that I've ever spent any time with. I do like a good visual novel now and again, but the dating sim, unless it involves Colonel Sanders, is really not the thing I'm looking for. But here's your sound sample. The music does sound spectacular. So hey, if you're waiting for Tokimeki Memorial to be playable, today is the day, and leave me a comment down below and tell me if you've ever played it, because I really don't hear many people talking about dating sims on the channel. Might just not be my audience. But moving over to Battle Sport here, this is originally a 3DO game. It was ported over to the Sega Saturn, so definitely has some 3DO vibes in the overall art style, as well as the complexity or lack thereof in the polygons. But this is another game that has seen improvement, another game that you can play on the core, and a game that a few people have actually asked me to check out, and I totally understand. This was probably one of those games back in the day that was on the bargain bin shelf. It probably didn't sell well, and I'm sure a lot of people had copies of this, because sometimes when you wanted a new game and there was something on the shelf for $10, you ended up with that game and you kind of fell in love with it. And I do love the fact that this has the 3DO aesthetic. Not many polys, not much going on with the floor and the skybox, but it does have just enough to understand what's going on, and it does have a relatively fun gameplay hook. You can definitely get stuck on some geometry here and there, but that was pretty much part and parcel for the early days of 3D on 3DO, and it definitely translates like that over on the Sega Saturn. But again, it's another game that's seen improvements, and it's another game that you can just sit down and play. And if you do have any other requests for games tested, leave me that comment down below. I try to hit each and every one of them in due course, and I'm sure we'll have plenty of Sega Saturn testing videos coming up shortly, so get your requests in there. I do love covering what it is you guys want to see, but you'll see here, sometimes you just end up bouncing around the arena like a pinball. That's what 3D controls are like back in the day. Not a problem with the core, just a problem with the game in and of itself. And big thanks to Andy D for helping with some of the captures this week. He told me as well that he had some control issues. But it's always fun to test these type of games, the games that'll never show up on the best Sega Saturn games of all time list, because it's as likely that there's a bug in a game that not many people would want to play that will fix 10 games that people do want to play. So many of these bugs, so many of these issues that you can find in games, once fixed, will basically fix dozens of other games at the same time. And that is why it's always important not just to test the biggest games on Saturn, because I've shown those basically until I am blue in the face. And speaking of games that not many people would remember from the Saturn but are kind of charming in their own right, is Wiz. You have a top hat cat as well as a cane holding rat, some Alice in Wonderland vibes going on here, and that rat right there, that hat is absolutely hilarious. This is not the type of game that everyone's going to immediately think of when they think of MiSTer FPGA, but it is a game that's worth checking out. I love the isometric view, definitely has a lot of Amiga vibes in the graphics, but it's another game that's recently seen improvements on the core, and one that you can play today. And that's why when I do these testing videos towards the back end, I usually show games that aren't going to be as popular to get you guys to understand how big the Sega Saturn library is. There are a ton of games on the platform, and a lot I'm sure that you've never heard of before. There's even some games that people have requested on the channel for me to test that I either forgot exist or didn't know existed in the first place. Recently, that Godzilla tactical RPG I showed, I only found out about that because somebody mentioned it to me in the comments, so I picked up a cheap copy. And there's going to be a ton of fun to be had on the Saturn core, so just start grabbing games you've never heard of before and play them. Test them out. If you find any bugs, report a GitHub ticket to SRG320, because he does go through them and he does make changes based upon what people find in their playtesting, because the Saturn library is immense and one person can't test everything to make sure it works. But I mean, Wiz is a charming game. It's definitely not going to be on any best platformers of all time lists, but the isometric view does look good. The graphics here are clean. It's got a fun soundtrack, and the best part is, as far as I know of this game, which is not a ton, it seems to be working 100% perfectly fine here on the most recent MiSTer FPGA Sega Saturn core. And I can't wait to hear what other games you discover from your testing. Tell me down below, what's the one Saturn game that you've discovered in the last year that you ended up liking that you didn't know about before? Maybe Maybe it's from this channel, maybe it's from another channel. Maybe you just saw a file and decided, hey, I'm going to throw it on my MiSTer and check it out, because maybe I will learn something new from you guys as well. I pretty much always do. But honestly, if there's one takeaway from the most recent cores, it is getting that SNAC support into MiSTer FPGA with the 3D analog controls. It just gives you a bigger, better experience on the games that utilize, and I do wish more games did utilize it back in the day. And even though it is a gigantic hockey puck of doom, it is a very comfortable controller. If you've never used it before and you take a look at a photo of it, you would think it wouldn't be the best in the hand, but honestly, I do really enjoy it. But that's the current situation with the current MiSTer FPGA Sega Saturn core as of the making of this video. Again, when we get new cores, I will do new previews, and I'm going to start running more single game previews showing you just how this core can be 100% the same as real Sega Saturn hardware. But again, if you have any requests for more tests, leave them down below. I'll try to get to each and every one of them. But the Saturn core is doing amazing, and I can't wait to see what it does next, and soon maybe even some real hardware comparisons. But I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.